Today is Equal Pay Day. 92 days into 2019, today's date marks how far into the new year women would have to work to earn as much as their male counterparts did in the previous calendar year alone. Women only earning 79 cents for every dollar men earn, according to Glassdoor's most recent survey, who predicts at its current rate that the pay gap won't close until 2070. Our next guest works closely with Silicon Valley and names like Airbnb, Twitter, Pinterest, Lyft, and others to advise companies on how to begin to actually close that gap. Paradigm founder and CEO Joelle Emerson joins us now. Joelle, great to have you on. What do you actually say to the companies that you advise on this topic? How do you counsel them?
So I think what we're seeing is that progressive companies are starting to take pay equity a lot more seriously than they have in the past. That's great news. But there are a couple of nuances that companies often miss, right? The first is, yes, today is the day that the average woman must work into 2019 to earn what our male counterparts earned in 2018. But the situation is actually different for a lot of women of color. For example, we know that black women have to work until late August to earn what male counterparts earned in 2018. For Latina women, the pay gap's even larger. They have to work until late November. So one piece of this is encouraging companies to really understand the nuances and the different barriers that people from different underrepresented backgrounds face. The other piece of this that's really important is understanding that it's not enough to just look at pay outcomes at the end of the day. Are two people in identical roles paid the exact same? Instead, we're encouraging companies to look at all of the factors that inform pay, like what's happening in the hiring process or in promotions or in negotiation. So those are the types of nuances that I think progressive companies are starting to think about as they look at how they're paying their workforce.
Which really highlights a key differentiation between the concept of equality versus equity. So when a company like last month, Google comes out and says it's underpaying many men as it addresses wage equity based on its research, you think what?
I think that's really surprising that in one of the biggest efforts to close a pay gap, it's an effort that's being done to sort of benefit men. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but I think what we need to do is we need to look at why are people being paid what they're paid? What's happening in a hiring process that might be leading to different outcomes in pay? What's happening in, leveling and in promotions and in performance reviews? And what we often see is if you just look at those numbers at the end of the day, you're actually missing all of these more complex factors that are determining what people get paid. And so while that might seem equal, it's not fair. It's not actually equitable.
Yeah. Joelle, the Glassdoor data was especially interesting to me because I think a lot of people are misconstruing the pay gap and what it actually means. It seems what Glassdoor was saying is that a lot of times women aren't in the industries necessarily where the pay is higher. They aren't in the job functions where the pay is higher. And so that discrepancy, which could be an opportunity discrepancy, it could be a problem of preparation, is maybe more the issue than just saying, well, let's make sure that the same people of the same gender and the same roles are being paid equally, right?
Yeah, it is complicated. So first of all, we do know that even people in the same roles do experience a pay gap. But what's really interesting is, yes, there are barriers to access, there are barriers to opportunity that are limiting people from entering into the same roles altogether. Interestingly, research actually shows that when women enter a field, pay in that field declines. So it's not enough to just say, well, women aren't interested in these fields that pay more, because what we see is as women gain interest in particular fields, our society tends to value those fields less. So there's a lot of complexity happening in how we think about the value of women's work and how that leads to the way that we compensate women.
Joelle, you work with quite a number of companies, particularly in Silicon Valley. What is the methodology you implement and how do you measure success?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to not just look at outcomes at the end of the day, but to look at all of the factors that are informing those outcomes. So in our work with over 300 companies, what we recommend is looking at what's happening to people from different backgrounds, not just women on average and men on average, but how our experience is different for white women and black men and Asian men and Latina women, looking at all of these differences across the employee experience. So from the point at which you apply to a company, to your experience in the hiring process, to what happens internally, from the way your performance is evaluated, what type of work opportunities you get, to the rates at which you stay or leave the company. By taking in all of those data points, we think companies can get a much more holistic picture of the employee experience. And then you can start to identify where gaps exist. You can begin to work to close those gaps. And the way you measure progress is by continually measuring those same data points year after year. I think a lot of companies think this is a one-and-done thing. We closed our pay gap this year. We're really proud of ourselves. Well, that's a step, but these things emerge year after year, so it's important to continue to measure and continue to make progress.